email me. So let's just set the record straight. As parents, we would all love for our students to be going to the very best and elite colleges. Let me tell you that I want this for your kids just as much as you do. So if there's an abundance of money, then no big deal. You can send them wherever you want. But what the question is, what can we do to protect the parents' future and give our kids the best future that we can? So we're going to go through some responsibilities and challenges as a parent. I want to start here by saying that my name's Dave Kuhn, and I am a financial advisor. I'm a retirement income certified professional with SageView Advisory, and I'm also the CEO of College Planning America, because we have seen that a number of parents in their financial planning and in planning for retirement, there's a lot of money that gets spent on college that takes away from retirement. And there's a number of different reasons for that, and we're going to kind of go through that this evening. So as parents, we have 4 major responsibilities or challenges. And the first one is to maintain our current lifestyle. We're trying to live a life that will give our kids a good life and give us a good life. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do by having jobs or businesses. The second one is to stay on track for retirement. While we're earning money, we're trying to put away some money for retirement so that we don't rely on our kids later on in life. And then a big responsibility, and probably the reason that you're on this webinar tonight, is funding college for our kids. And then securing our family's future in case of unexpected circumstances. So as parents, these are some of the things that worry us and concern us, and we want to go through. So for college planning, there's really 2 sides to the story. You have on the left-hand side what parents and students go through, and then on the right-hand side what parents go through. So with the parents and the students, you have going through assessments to figure out what their natural strengths are and their natural giftedness, and trying to figure out what their career might be, and what their majors would be, what schools they're going to go to, what scholarships they might get, and then we also look at schools as to what 4-year graduation rate do they have. We ideally want one with a reasonable 4-year graduation rate, because one of the biggest costs for colleges and one of the biggest wasted money areas are kids spending more than 4 years in college. And at this stage, there's about 70% of all students who are currently in college that will spend more than 4 years in college. So what I can tell you is that your advisor, the counselors at Whittier, are a great resource for you to get more information about this, to help your students, and I do know that they spend a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to help your students go through this process here that the parents and students go through. On the other side, we have the parents who are struggling with some questions and say, okay, how are we going to pay for this? Can we lower our EFC? And I'll explain what an EFC is in a minute. Is there some strategic planning that we can do? And if we're trying to fill this bucket for retirement, what can we do to plug some of the holes so that we're not wasting on our retirement? And so as parents, we also concerned with the right-hand side of this. So we're going to talk a little bit about both sides. My question always is, who is helping the parents? Your counselors and the folk at school do a wonderful job of helping the students. And the actual reason why some of the counselors at Whittier Christian and some other schools ask me to speak to the parents is because they understand that someone needs to be helping the parents to put this all into a plan that fits everywhere. So we talk about what makes a fit for college. We use the acronym to map it out. And the first one is you want to match the student's strengths and career choice to the school they're going to look for. The second one is they've got to be able to be accepted in that school. And then the third one is somebody's got to be able to pay for it. And unless you have all of those, then it's really not a good fit for your students. So you really want all of those to be present. So there's really 4 components to the best strategy for college. The first one is on our college selection. We want to make sure that it's a good fit for the majors, their careers, and that they'll be accepted and that the price is good. The second one is the financial aid side. Am I going to possibly get some need-based financial aid, some merit-based financial aid, any tuition discounts, any special skills that my kid has, either in sport or in music or something like that? And then is there a possibility that I can negotiate some financial aid, which is possible if it's done properly. Then we want to look at our personal resources and see what is our income, what are our assets. Is there a possibility of maybe getting some gifts from often grandparents, or if I'm going to take any loans out, what do those loans look like and where's the best place to get them? And then on the planning side, is there a possibility for me to increase my financial aid by getting some tax credits or investing differently to be able to fund college? Or do I need to maybe shift some of my assets? Or what am I doing? Because I want to make sure that that planning side is correct so that I can end up retiring as well. So I'm going to start out on the eligibility side, on how colleges determine your need eligibility, because the biggest thing that I find that people most often speak about is, will I be eligible to get some scholarships? And we want to be able to take a look at that and how they determine that. And so the schools will look at your cost of attendance, and your cost of attendance at a school is your room, board, books, tuition, transportation. All of that is included because that's really what it's going to cost you. So let's just say your school was going to cost you $40,000. Then you go and complete the FAFSA form, and they give you a number called an expected family contribution. I'm going to go through that in a sec. And let's say your EFC, after you've completed the FAFSA form, was $20,000. That gets deducted from the cost of attendance. And that EFC is made up of 7 different things: your parent income, parent assets, student income, student assets, the numbers in college, ages of the parents, and the numbers in the household. And then if you deduct that, that will determine your financial need for need-based financial aid. This is the maximum amount of financial aid that a family might be able to receive as far as need-based financial aid. So that's kind of how the formula works when you complete the FAFSA form. The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And we suggest that pretty much everybody complete the FAFSA form. And if you want to qualify for any need-based financial aid, then you're going to need to complete the FAFSA form. Here's some stats that is really concerning. The fastest age group for college debt, the folk who are 50 and older are one of the fastest growing age groups for student loan debt. The age group of 60 and older is the fastest growing age group of student loan debt. And that's because parents who are often 60 and older are the ones who are taking on, their students might start college in their 50s, and then they're taking on loans on behalf of their students. And we really want to prevent that or minimize that if we can. Those stats come from the Department of Education. So in reality, where are the savings for college? Because very often most people have the perception that the main savings come from the FAFSA form, but in reality, what I've found, that it's possible to save money on proper planning from the FAFSA, but my experience is that most of the money is saved by a proper process and answering some vital questions. And we're going to go through those questions tonight. So let's talk about the FAFSA first, because that's often where people go first. and we'll kind of explain a little bit about that. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, and it's a form that will determine your ability to qualify for need-based financial aid. So there's different types of financial aid. You have merit-based, which is based on the student's achievements, their GPA, their SAT, their essays, their skills. Does the school really want this kid? Do they think that they'll qualify for merit-based financial aid? Then you have need-based financial aid, and that is based on the parents' financial numbers, which is on the FAFSA form. And that's where your EFC number comes from. The EFC stands for your expected family contribution, and you'll get a number for that, which will determine your ability to get need-based financial aid. And then you have negotiated financial aid, which is based on your process, and your list of schools that you apply to will determine whether you actually can get any negotiated financial aid. So parents often ask me, why should I complete the FAFSA form? Firstly, because most schools will require you to complete the FAFSA form in order to assess your possible financial aid. And then secondly, we don't know what our future need is going to be. And last year was a really good example of the unknown and the future. Many families didn't know that what was going to happen last year with COVID, and people lost their jobs, people lost their incomes, things changed, and so you never know when you're going to possibly need financial aid. So what does the FAFSA actually give me? When I complete the FAFSA, they look at those 7 different things that we looked at: parents' income, parents' assets, student income, student assets, the age of the parents, number of kids in college, and which college you're going to. And you actually get an EFC number, and my expected family contribution. My EFC number is not your financial aid. So when you see that number, that's not your financial aid. That's the amount that you will need to write on your personal check before you can get any need-based financial aid. So the goal in reality would to try and get that number as low as possible, because that's the amount that we have to contribute to get need-based financial aid first. My EFC, I've already spoken about those 7 different things that the number of that the EFC is made up of. And don't forget that there's a type of school that will also determine your financial aid, and we'll cover that in a sec. So what do I need to prep for the FAFSA form? I'm going to actually take into account that the assumption that most families of the seniors have already either completed the FAFSA form or are currently doing so. And so I'm going to mostly be assuming that we're speaking to parents with juniors and under. If you are a parent with a senior and you have not completed the FAFSA form already, don't panic. And I'll show you kind of the order that you need to be doing things in. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me about your FAFSA form, and I'd be willing to help you. The first thing that I suggest is for the parents with juniors and under is to get an estimate now of what your EFC is. And I'm gonna give you my contact information to contact us after this presentation, and we can give you an estimate of what your expected family contribution would be either next year or the year after, based on some of the assumptions that we give, so that you can get an estimate of the possibility of getting financial aid, or get some estimates of what college might cost you. So this isn't, you're not too early to get an estimate of your EFC. So these are some of the things that you need to prep for the FAFSA form. You need your tax return. For 2021, if you have a junior this year, because they'll be completing the FAFSA form in October next year. You'll also need an estimated income for 2022 once you get into 2022. And the reason for that is because if it's going to change or might decrease, then we want to know either increase or decrease. We want to take that into account when we do an estimate for you. Then they will also look at any balances of assets, any bank accounts, any stock accounts, trusts, 529 plans. And so any of the liquid assets, they do not take into account retirement accounts. So any 401ks or IRAs are not taken into account on the FAFSA form. And then it's also going to record any income or assets in the student's name. So this is quite important of planning in advance, because to maximize your EFC, you really do not want any assets in the student's name, and you want to minimize their income for the year before they complete the FAFSA form. And then they'll also be asking you for your latest mortgage statements on your house and any rental properties, because that also will count. Your home does not, your equity in your home does not count for your FAFSA form, but it will count in the CSS profile form, and any equity in rental properties will actually count as well. So these are the things that you're going to need to prep for the FAFSA form. You'll also need a list of schools that you think you might apply to, and so that we can actually put in those schools and give you an estimate of what that might cost. So let me talk a little bit about the timing of FAFSA, and this is really important if you have a senior right now. October 1st is the earliest date that you can apply. So for those who have seniors, you can go ahead and you can be applying for the FAFSA right now. For those who have juniors, October 1st next year is the earliest date that you can apply. Now, this does not mean to say that you have to go and do it on October the 1st. That's just the earliest date that you can apply. March 2nd is actually the deadline. So if you have a senior now, you need to do this before March 2nd at the latest. Cal Grant also requires submission of a school certified GPA by March 2nd, and your school mostly takes care of that for you. Some colleges will also require additional financial information, such as the CSS profile. A lot of the more expensive private colleges will require you to complete the CSS profile form, and as you do that, as you apply to the school, they'll actually send you an email and ask you to complete the CSS profile form. So let's talk a little bit about what should happen first. You should prioritize sending out your applications first and then the FAFSA. It does you no good to do the FAFSA if you have not sent out your applications, because when the school receives the FAFSA form, if they don't have an application, they don't know who your kid is. So prioritize sending out the applications first and get those done, and then you can do the FAFSA form. It's really not that difficult. As your counselors will tell you, that we have offered to help parents with completing the FAFSA form if they have questions and need some help completing those. So before I complete the FAFSA form, our suggestion is that you actually get an accurate estimate of your EFC, and because that allows you then to compare what your estimate is with the real EFC on the FAFSA form, so that you know if you're really on target and if you've done things correctly. Because sometimes people don't know what their EFC should be, and they've made some mistakes on the actual FAFSA form, and then they get a number that's really just totally out of whack, but they don't know what to, they have nothing to compare it to, so they don't know. Getting that estimate will also give you an estimate of possible financial aid, and will also give you, be able to give you details of the colleges that you're applying to. So in other words, what would this college cost me? Because the sticker price is not always the price that you will pay. And so I can start getting an estimate so that I can talk to my kids about what college might cost and how we're going to do this. And it gives you the ability to compare your EFC, as I said, with the FAFSA form. So one of the other questions I get is sometimes parents hear that their kids can file as an independent, that they don't have to have the parents' information, and there's a whole list of requirements. So I thought I'd just do this. I'm going to just briefly go through this. If you were born prior to 1998, if you're married or separated but not divorced, if you're working on a master's or a doctorate degree, if the student has children of their own and they pay for more than half of their children's expenses, if the student is an emancipated minor, they're currently serving in the armed forces or a veteran. So if you answered yes to any of those, then that student could possibly file as an independent for federal financial aid purposes. If you do not answer yes to any of those, then your student cannot file as an independent. One of the other things I want to quickly go through is who reports as a parent, because there's some blended families and some divorced families, and so this might give some clarification. If the parents are married to each other, then both of them have to report their financial information. If the parents live together but are not married, then same thing, both of them have to report their financial information. If the parents are not married and do not live together, it's the financial information of the parent that the student lived with more than 50% of the past year, or the custodial parent is reported. If the parents are not married and do not live together, but the student has lived with both parents equally, then it's the parent who has supplied most financial support. If the custodial parent is remarried, then the step-parent's financial information has to be reported as well. One of the parents is deceased, their financial information is not reported. If the student lives with legal guardians or foster parents, then the financial information of the legal guardians or foster parents is not reported, but their financial support of the student is counted as income to the student. So it can get a little complicated if this is not kind of your standard family, and so you really want to get some advice on that before you file. So we suggest that you consult your college advisor on which schools require non-custodial parent information, because this could make actually a huge difference in your financial aid. I breezed through that because if you have any questions on that, then feel free to email me afterwards and I'd be happy to answer that. What about the CSS profile? As I mentioned, some of the private schools will request that you complete the CSS profile form, and they will require both the FAFSA and the CSS profile form. So if you're going to like a Notre Dame or a USC or some of those schools, they'll also ask you to complete the CSS profile form. On the you can just go to cssprofile.collegeboard.org and you can get that there, but mostly the schools will send that to you and request that after you've actually applied to the school. So you'll know, the school will let you know if they want you to do that. And then sometimes the colleges will request financial information from both parents if they ask you to complete the CSS profile form. This form also takes into account the equity in your home, which the FAFSA does not. Also, if you have any COVID questions on the application, then speak to us first, as you might or might not want to answer the COVID questions on the application. So let's go through the process and the timing of these things. Firstly, as I said, you want to get your application done. That's the first thing that needs to get done. Then you complete the FAFSA form, because when the school receives your EFC number and the information, then they actually have your application and they have your student's name, and your student will probably have a student number at that stage. Then comes the acceptance from the school to say, okay, thanks very much for your application. We accept you, and we might grant you a $5,000 scholarship for merit aid or a $10,000 scholarship for merit aid based on your GPA or based on any other things that you've done as far as merit goes. Then comes the need-based financial aid. And the need-based financial aid mostly comes for parents who are have seniors now. That will really come in after January, mostly next year. So if you receive a letter from the school that you've applied to now, and you receive a letter from them immediately saying, thanks very much, we've accepted you in our school and we're going to give you a $5,000 scholarship. Most of those schools have not taken into account the information from the FAFSA form, because remember that most parents have until March next year to complete the FAFSA form. Now, my suggestion is that you don't wait until March next year. You do it as soon as your applications are finished. But remember, the first letter that you receive is probably not taking into account any need-based financial aid. And then come the final offers. Most of the final offers will come February, March, April next year. And that's really where you want to compare the offers from the schools and then can start doing some negotiation. So that's kind of the timing and the process from that. And then the students, most students wait until midnight, the night before they're supposed to accept from the college. So that's really what happens on the student side and what they're doing there. We've kind of gone through the applications and what they're going to be doing and which schools they're going to be doing and things like that. So let's take a look at some of the questions that the parent side need to answer. And so as a parent, we would all of us would mostly give our lives for our kids. Question is, should we? And what are we teaching them by doing everything for them and giving them everything? So I have 2 kids and I have 2 grandkids, and I know that we would sacrifice a lot for both our kids and our grandkids. The question is, are we being responsible with what we do? So if you can afford an expensive college and you are able to retire without running out of money or relying on your kids for help in the future, then that's a wonderful thing. But as a financial advisor, I try to get families to consider the reality and hear and see the truth with a plan for their future. Sometimes this is not popular with parents, but it's my job to help the parents. We want to go into it with our eyes open. So that's kind of as setting the premise for some of these discussions. One question is, do I have the number of what my end cost will be after loan interest and inflation? So in other words, have I done an extrapolation of all the numbers to know that when I'm done with college or my kid is done with college, what's the end number that I'll be paying? So it's kind of like a mortgage. When we look at our mortgage, we look at the monthly payments, but none of us really want to look at the end number that we've actually ended up paying for our house. Well, for college, you really want to do that. Have I added in all the costs for any of my other kids that might be going to college? Many cases, families are looking at their kid that is going to college right now, and they have not taken into account the ability to have to fund or put the other kids through college. Then I want to consider, where is the money coming from? Where am I taking the money from? Is some of the money coming from what I'm currently paying Whittier? The bad news is for you is that you're paying extra money to send your kid to Whittier. The good news is that you used to paying that extra money for your kid to go to Whittier. The good news also is that your kid's getting at a wonderful school. But considering where the money's coming from, can I continue using the cash flow that I have been for high school? Am I saving? Do I have any savings? Where is this money going to come from? If I'm taking on loans, where's the most efficient place for me to get those loans, to get that money? And can I make the payments if I'm taking out those loans? So here are 6 essential questions for parents on college. These are kind of the most important questions that I would suggest that parents parents answer for themselves. And anything else that you've heard up to now, my thoughts are that you can save more money on these 6 questions if you kind of go through them than with anything else. The first one is, who's paying for college? And this is what you want to sit down with your spouse and say, hey, who's paying for college? Are we paying for everything, or do we want our kids to have some skin in the game? Every family is different. The second question is, what do I think college will cost? So let's actually get in our minds what we think college will cost and see if that matches up with reality. And then thirdly, what is our college number? What is the number that we are prepared to actually spend on our kids' college? Because in reality, that's really what's going to happen. is we need to set that number first as to determine what we can spend on college, and then we work backwards from there. And then what impact does that have on our ability to retire or live without being a burden on our kids? Have we communicated these things to our students? So those questions, those 4 questions above that, once we've got answers to those, have we then communicated that to our students? Because one of the biggest things that I see are problems for college is that the kids don't have expectations. They don't know the expectations of the parents. And so they're sitting at school, they're going through the application process, they've made a list of schools, they have no idea what the schools are going to cost, the parents have no idea what the schools are going to cost, and so the kid comes waving this acceptance form to say, hey, I've been accepted into Harvard, and it's going to cost me $70,000 a year, and the parents are shocked as to what college is going to cost. So we want to go through these and then communicate that to our students. We don't want to steal their dreams. We want to encourage them to apply to the colleges that they can get into or that they want to go to, but we also want to set expectations up front. If it comes in above this number, or if we don't get as much financial aid as we think we're going to get, then we must be ready for perhaps some other alternatives. And then the last one is, have I considered the effects that the choices of student number 1 makes on the rest of my kids that are coming up later on? Because in many cases, we are able to fund student number 1, but then come across student number 2 and 3 and 4. And remember, whatever expectations we set for student number 1, the other students are going to expect similar treatment. And then one more is, do I know the answers to the 4 essential questions that every financial advisor should answer? So think about that. Do I know the answers to those 4 essential questions? So you're probably saying, okay, Dave, what are the 4 essential questions? Well, let's go through them. And the first question is, what rate of return do I have to earn on my savings and investment dollars to be able to retire at my current standard of living and have my money last through life expectancy? Do I know what that rate of return number needs to be able to do that? Do I have a plan for that? How much do I need to save on a monthly or annual basis to be able to retire in our current standard of living and have our money last till life expectancy? Do I know how much I need to be saving to be able to do that? If I'm currently doing what I'm doing and I continue to that, how long will I have to work to be able to retire and live in the current lifestyle that we have until life expectancy? And then the 4th question, if I don't do anything different to what I'm doing today, how much will I have to reduce my standard of living at retirement for my money to last through life expectancy? Those are 4 questions that a financial advisor should be answering for you if you have a proper plan put together. And these questions affect what we do with what our students do. You know, I see it so often that when I ask parents, what have you told your kid as far as, you know, which college they can go to and how much college will cost? And that hasn't been discussed. It's kind of like us saying to our kids, hey, when you graduate, I'm going to buy you a car. And then when they do graduate, you say, go off and pick whatever car you want. The price doesn't matter. So that's kind of what we do with college in many cases, because as parents, we're embarrassed to have these discussions with our kids, and we feel like this is something that we forget to talk about that. Instead of seeing this as a wonderful teaching opportunity to teach our kids how to plan for their finances, and that to set expectations correctly that will match our finances and match our standard of living. So our focus really is, you know, you're trying to fill this bucket for retirement, and we want to identify, are there possible holes in the bucket? If there's some holes in the bucket, then we want to plug up some of those holes and make sure that our plan is the most efficient possible. We're kind of going to wrap it up here, but there's one question that your counselor cannot ask you, your counselor at school. And if you can think what that question might be, our counselors do an amazing job. They help our kids as much as possible. But in fact, the reason that we have this set up here tonight for you guys to speak to a financial advisor, if that's what you want to do, or to get some advice on this, is that your counselor cannot ask you, how much money do you make and how much money do you have? That's not a place where they can go. And so that's why we want to bring this student side and the parent side together, so that we can bring that together. So I do want to offer a no-cost 90-minute appointment, and you can just reach out to me if you want to take my number down and write my email address down, and you can pop me an email. And Scott, perhaps if you, I will have all of those folk who are on the webinar tonight. I will have your information. I'll just send you a quick email after this, so that you've got my email address. And if you have any questions, then feel free to reach out and ask us about that. One of the biggest mistakes that people make after hearing this information, after seeing this, is that they assume we cannot help them. And it's a mistake. And my question is, my answer to folk is, sometimes they'll come and say to me, hey, I'm not sure if you can help me. My situation is this, my situation is that. And I'm like, you're right. I don't know if I can help you either. The only way I know if I can help you is if I get the correct information, because everyone's personal information is different. And so your neighbor's kid that's in the same class, that sits next to your kid in the same class, that has the same grades, might have a different cost of college going to the same college as you do, because your personal circumstances are different. So I would encourage you, it's not going to be a burden on me or anything like that. If you want to, just pop me an email, and I will do whatever I can to answer your questions or to help you in any way. If it's just 1 or 2 questions, feel free to just email those to me. And if it's something larger that you need some help with, that you actually want to sit down with me, we can either do a Zoom call, or we can sit down in person and go through. But the parent side and the student side really need to go together. So thanks very much for attending this tonight, and I would be happy to help you in any way that I can. And thanks to Scott and the rest of the folk there for making this available to the parents. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful night.